Good viewer. Watch Xirtus. Watch Xirtus.
Y'all know the name. Welcome to Nuropa.
How's it going? So this is part 3.
Yes. This time we're not creating new titles and thumbnails. We just keep on going because I front loaded so much onto this episode.
Yeah, it's actually a trilogy, which is pretty based. Okay, so if you've been paying attention, which I know you have, because if you watch Xirtus, you already know. That should be our slogan. If you watch Xirtus, you already know. I noticed this because Roman Yampolsky, our buddy who I did my episode, a couple episodes, AI simulation theory doctor guy, he recently did episode 2345, simulacrum 2345 of Joe Rogan, and I was just amazed how many Joe Rogan guests are just rehashed Xirtus interview episodes at this point. Like we're racking them in, which is pretty great. No complaints by me, but I just thought if you haven't already, you know what, shout out to Roman, go ahead and watch his Rogan interview, but do better than that. Watch Roman Yampolsky Xirtus. If I type that here, will that just come up yet? Is it as easy as that? Of course not. Why would they make it easy for you to find his earlier episodes?
No, it has to be Lex Friedman, of course. Don't you know? He's a much better interviewer than you.
Is it because he takes Quaaludes and they don't exist anymore? I don't know. So Dr. Roman Yampolsky, look at him when he's young. That's how you know you're in before. And then Break Free, Dr. Roman Yampolsky Vaporwave Edition, which is the other one. These are the two I did with him. And then about a year ago, Lex did it. And I think that's when Joe Rogan kind of started paying attention to him. So that's cool. But I would highly recommend checking these out. The first one was pretty chill. We're just talking about, the basics of AI and where it was going. And he's very much anti-AI. Well, I mean, I wouldn't quite go that far, but he might actually. He's very concerned about the threat to humanity that is AI, right? And how dangerous AI. God, did I really have that mustache? That's hilarious. So this is a good interview. I really think it's worth watching. And the second one, Break Free, we went even further because I realized, this guy's crazy. Like, he's interested in simulation theory. He's pretty convinced we're in a simulation, and he wants to know how we can break out of the simulation, which is a major. We talked a lot about X Church and this idea of creating a sort of pseudo religion that helps people over generations figure out if you're in a simulation and how you can escape the simulation. So definitely just wanted to shout that out. Pretty exciting for Roman. Good for you, buddy. And then, yeah, you can definitely watch episodes 1 and 2 of this. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Oh, no. Just let me one up on that. Please search on that page for Rogan. And that's just a 1-minute clip we can play right away. Yet another example where, in this case, one of the very first Nuropa episodes, we spoke with Michael about starvation of consciousness, the wheat production thing. And guess what? Now, 2 years later, look which idea Rogan's got. Maybe, yeah, you want to turn on the audio or not? I mean, we can also read it. You mute it.
I'm concerned about muting myself or Rogan, really. Let's see. Gonna explain what's wrong with American bread. In America, we call bread, can't believe this, considered food. In parts of Europe, see here, it's not so much the gluten as what we've done to the grain. About 200 years ago, we started stripping the germ of the bran and the nutrients to make flour shelf stable, also nutriently dead. Nutrients were gone. We enriched it with folic acid, which the large majority of the population can't even metabolize. Therefore, many people experience fatigue, anxiety, hyperactivity, and inflammation. But then bread wasn't white enough, so they bleached it with glass chlorine gas and didn't stop there. They had a carcinogen called potassium bromate, which is banned in several countries like Europe, UK, even China. And then we wanted to ramp up production, so we started using glyphosate to dry out the wheat before harvest, causing endocrine and it's moving so fast.
Disruption and damaging your butt, damaging your gut.
Your gut. So now we're brain fog. Blame gluten. Gluten is just a scapegoat. The real issue was ultra processed, chemically altered bleached bromine. Okay, so we've said this years ago. If you watch Xirtus, you already know that basically whatever it is, you already know.
Exactly. But you can actually even pull it up on your channel, Starvation of Consciousness, just so people see what we're talking about and they can find the episode most easily. We had at least one about 2-hour conversation with Michael, who had investigated this for many years. All the details are in the episode. And there's also,
Starvation of Consciousness. Boom. Right here with our dear friend, the Archangel, Michael. This is a great guy. We hung out in a coffee shop in Vienna and talked about how Freud would have been hyperactive because of the amount of caffeine that he was ingesting even before he had access to cocaine. So definitely love this guy. He's a very practical Austrian man. You know, one of my favorite people, actually. And anytime we talk to an Austrian, at least whenever I talk to an Austrian, we get to go super deep into Wilhelm Reich and Heidegger and Kierkegaard and Freud and Jung and everything else he'd ever wanted to talk Gestalt. So yeah, you'll like him for a lot of reasons. But one of the best episodes that we've talked about the brand and what they've done to bread, and yeah, just important stuff. So pretty cool. And then we did already everything up to part 2, and then most of part 2. Did we get all of part 2? There's a few things we missed, you think, or we're just ready for part 3?
I think we're pretty much ready. I hope almost, I mean, maybe not 100% the Air India plane crash anomalies, but I can't say much about that anyways. We got Trump and Iran. We can start with the part 3, everything that's below.
Yeah, maybe a good comment to make about Trump and Iran would be Trump Shylock, just really quickly, because this was kind of interesting. Is Trump said he didn't realize when he called these debt farming bankers Shylocks that it was an anti-Semitic term, which I thought was hysterical.
I honestly have never heard that term. I think Shylock.
You've never heard Shylock? You never heard of Shylock before? Really? Okay, well, good. Good for you. Shylock was a Venetian Jewish moneylender in The Merchant of Venice, right? And Shylock, Merchant, Venice, Shylock, right? So it's an anti-Semitic trope that has been, I guess, done away with maybe in most pop culture. But this idea that Jews are bankers, I don't know. J.K. Rowling, Goblin's Bank, right? Like if you ever pay attention to J.K. Rowling, she's gotten in trouble for being a anti-transgender TERF, but these tiny little giant nosed bankers that run the Harry Potter series, I cannot believe she got away with this, really. Like this is the most unbelievably racist thing. Look at this. Like, what? Tell like, who doesn't? Am I the bad guy? Like, is there something wrong with me that I saw what this was about? Like, who didn't get Gringotts? Gnomes of Zurich was an anti-Semitic trope, but this seemed like on the same wavelength as Shylock. So Trump said he didn't realize what he said sounded grossly anti-Semitic. But it's interesting because this comes right after Trump, let's see, distancing himself from Netanyahu. So there we go. If you start to notice when he really blocked. Interesting. Let's try. What do I even do? What do you even do when you're blocked? Oh, let's go to the Jewish page. Thanks, Israel. Cool. Is Trump deliberately avoiding Netanyahu? I mean, just saying, like, it's who. I'm sure Germany thought it was racist when this came out of the mouths of Arabs, but when Jews say it, it's okay. Netanyahu was getting Trump more and more irritated, and he started stepping away from Israel months ago. Let's say like February even. He started saying, you know what, if he really wants peace, blah, 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 blah. And then he went and he visited Mohammed bin Salman and Ahmed al-Shara, and he went to Qatar. And so he's just dealing with all of these Muslims and Arabs, right? This was what Trump was all about, is the art of the deal. And he started really connecting himself with, maybe, I don't want to say post-Muslim Arabs, because clearly they're still Muslim, but these are hyper-materialists. And I think that they're more interested in having delivery pizza and Lamborghinis and Ferraris than they are in having Sharia law. No? Am I right? I feel like that's what's happening. A lot of these people don't really care so much about stoning their daughters to death anymore. You know, like, things have just changed. And
that's what the rumors say about the potentially even hedonistic lifestyle of certain royal family members. You know, none dare truly entertain this idea, but
good for them, you know, because really there's a whole part of the Quran where it talks about the dates and honey and goat smoke, right? And how much that's something that Muhammad, peace be upon him, loved, right? So I think that's in like chapter, what number did you guess? Did you guess 19?
Are you serious?
And shake the trunk of the palm tree towards you. It will drop upon your ripe, fresh dates. So eat and drink and be content. Yeah, there's just actually a whole bunch of stuff about dates milk, you know, good for him. Anyway, so Trump started distancing himself, bypassing Netanyahu. And then when the Iran conflict finally happened, and I got to admit that this is something that's been going on for years, but it was inevitable after Gaza. And I think that Trump was pretty annoyed with Gaza. The first thing he did to distance himself was during Biden's watch, when Gaza was genocided and destroyed and paved paradise and put up a parking lot, kind of Jody Collins music there. They had a conversation where Trump said, it's not going to be Israel. It's not going to be Palestine. It's going to be the new Las Vegas, right? Like, Trump said he's going to like bring in a bunch of money and investments, and they're going to build something really beautiful there. But the way people heard that, they were like, oh God, what a horrible thing Trump is saying. I always thought it was interesting because he didn't say Israel was going to get this land. It was America was going to take this land, right? And this is the beginning of Trump's whole thing, is that he's pushing himself into control. Yeah, I know, Joni Mitchell, you're right. Good call. I like, you know what? I've looked at clouds from both sides now. I'm just kidding. Anyway, they decided they're going to have America control Gaza, and with the Iran deal, Trump saw and foresaw this was coming, and when it was almost too late for America to intervene, America did. America came in and kind of pushed Israel out of the way and took over, said, hey, look, we're financing them, we're giving them weapons, we're going to be in charge of the strike. If we can't
officially now, finally.
Yeah, because if we can't be stopping the thing, then we should at least be in charge of the thing, which is kind of crazy. But at the same time, you know, instead of bombing Tehran and killing women and children left and right, you know what I mean? Saying like, this is in the middle. Trump bombs the middle of the desert, way far away from a bunch of civilians, which is the best case scenario. That honestly, the least horrible
Yeah.
thing that could have happened.
In this crazy world, it is indeed.
Exactly. So I think that was a major reason why Trump did that, was because now he can call the shots in a sense, and that sort of stopped the war in a lot of ways, because they called for a peace treaty and he was so pissed. He's like, he used the F word, right? He dropped the F bomb. That was the thing. He dropped the F bomb. I thought that was really interesting, the way that synchronicity symbols work.
Is that better than the N bomb?
That's what he says. He sure says it's better than the N bomb. He says no one should be just throwing around the N word, the way nuclear, right? The way that they've been doing it. So okay, that's my pitch about Trump and Iran, and I think that there's probably some truth to that. Is he was trying to, because he also, Israel said they wanted to replace the government in Iran, and Trump said he didn't. Trump was like, hey, like Afghanistan and Iraq were not fun for us. It's expensive to buy a new government. So we should just like keep working with them if we can. Crazy thing to say, right? So I don't know, interesting. All right, now you said Tatar deportation, Stalin's forgotten genocide. Are you kidding me? They finally got the bald guy to catch up with us. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, just briefly before we get into this, two things. Of course, on previous shows, I guess 3-4 shows ago, we spoke about the whole nuclear thing. Just recently, I posted on my Facebook. Anyhow, not many people see it. But of course, many people are not yet hip to all of these ideas. Unfortunately, I don't recall which episode it was exactly. We spoke about the whole nuclear issues and the work of Miles Mathis on the nukes. And the other thing I always find interesting when the, dare I say this as an Austrian, Jewish question comes up, is that very oftentimes there is this trope and idea that, oh, whatever we would define as Jews today would be the very same thing as that what is supposedly in medieval history books. And at least through the presentations that David Jung Jr. gave, it may well be that at the very least modern Orthodox Judaism and the yeshivas have mainly been founded and created somewhere in the 1800s. Mm-hmm. And my issue with this is because on the one hand you could say, oh no, don't take away all this great tradition from the Jews, don't you like them? But at the same time, the other side is using that explanation and then saying, don't you know, in medieval history, the Jews have been expelled from over 600 countries, or whatever figure they use. So it kind of serves to fuel both sides. Yeah. When the truth may actually be something very different. And especially if it's correct that within the Bible, this is the most interesting thing for me, what is called Jews is simply the Judica, so the judges, so the system, so the government, and does not actually refer to a religious group or an ethnic group at all. That, of course, would completely change that view on history. But let's see how many more years we'll have to wait before that is agreed upon or being properly discussed.
Is Fegula anti-Semitic? I guess this is, I'm translating here because they're writing is Fag and antiseptic. I saw another one a second ago. Is Shyster antiseptic? I'm pretty sure you're talking about something else, because soap is antiseptic. I think you're saying anti-Semitic. And according to the Wikipedia, Shyster comes from German. It might be from Yiddish, but it's Shyster as in a defecator, someone who poops, right? And but according to the Board of Deputies of British Jews, advocacy for the community, and they're in charge, right? They're in charge of what Jews are allowed to be offended by. So they say that they have no particular offense to the word shyster. So I think we're okay. Yeah, shyster has to do more with lawyers than with bankers, though. So
there's actually one more thing I have to bring up just because we're on that topic still. I'm sending it to you in private chat. This was sent to me by a dear friend whom you know as well. And this is just, the mainstream thing. I mean, I would say mainstream, but it's funny. So it's about the Havara Agreement. I'm pretty sure you mentioned this many times on different shows. It's just curious that this is a maybe mid-sized channel, one would say, and maybe not always boosted, but this one has good views. The most interesting thing is, so everyone just check out Havara Agreement and the strange connections between sides that should be 100 million% opposed, but maybe they were not. Just scroll down a little bit and look at the first few comments.
Oh, how far back do we have to go? Okay. In Germany, it is impossible to publicly discuss these subjects and working in public schools at the same time. A British politician and previous lawyer. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the most important one. It's basically illegal to talk about history in Germany. Like the official motto of the German nation He was Austrian, actually. That's what that's their whole. They should put it on all of their bumper stickers. But yeah, I mean the relationship between
And
the
in
Nazis
Austria,
and
they
Zionists
will
must be
say
weird.
it's the Germans that annexed us.
Yeah, they're like, hey, my wife, please take her. Yeah, I like that about Austria. They mean well. Yeah, I think the other thing to remember is it's not just the Nazis, it's the British Zionists. The British Zionists were really key to the Havar Agreement, but the Nazis were a big part of it. And especially they brought a huge chunk of the German Zionist Jews to Israel because they were thinking, hey, we can build a stable Jewish trading partner. We don't actually hate the Jews. We just want to have a Jewish state as a trading partner. And they thought this would be really beneficial, especially because there's a huge connection between Ashkenazi Europeanized Jews and the Germans. I mean, they do a lot of things in common, and there's a lot of neuroses in the German people. Advent and Hanukkah are very similar. There's just so many weird crisscrosses of culture that people don't really recognize, and they're very similar in some very interesting ways. But they were nationalists, and so this was also maybe more of a Napoleonic idea to create a national ethno-stated Europe, and not just a Europe, but also a Palestine. So this would be an interesting video. We'll definitely have to check out the History Hustle. Give him a little love right there. Okay, so then you wanted to bring up the forgotten genocide of the Tatars, right?
Yeah, this is yet another one of those, I think, mainstream guys, at least the guy presenting, this Simon Whistler. And
dude, this
yeah,
guy
I
doesn't
mean,
know.
please.
I like that he knows absolutely nothing. He's basically, he used to, when he first presented himself, make it look like he knew what he was talking about, but now he just straight up is reading from a teleprompter. It's incredible. Like, there's not a single thing about this that makes it sound like he knows anything about anything. He knows he's got a team that are writing things for him. And I like that. I like it when you kind of admit that there's just nothing to you as a person, just the vaporous personality.
Yeah, I saw an interesting comment recently somewhere also discussing, big channels and questionable potential propaganda content. And someone said, well, he wouldn't be surprised if many of the super main channels in whatever type of sphere, politics, gaming, which also veers into politics these days, if you listen to Asmongold or whatever, if not many of those are actually in some way, shape, or form just paid Hollywood actors, for lack of a better term, and just to continue this illusion, well, anyone can make it, just like maybe at some point they would have claimed anyone can make it in Hollywood, well, anyone can make it on YouTube, but actually, no, not really. Either you get tapped, or you are so conformist and stay within your lane that it is as if you would have been tapped for a certain task, and that is when you get amplified. And if not, well, you get nowhere.
The lighting,
or you get now here. So welcome everyone to Now and Here Nuropa. Thank you all for joining.
Yes, you are now on a watch list. Congratulations. Well, so yeah, I think this is important. Obviously, I would, basically steer you back to Xirtus, Tartarian interview. Is that the one? What's the one? What's it called? Like a Tartarian refugee? Do I have to say Tatarstan? How are we gonna find the video? Accounts of Tatarstan, survivors of the erasure gulag.
Yes.
Yeah, watch this video. This is a video that we did years ago. That's an interview with a wonderful Tatarstani girl from Tatarstan, and she tells us all about her family and the history and the erasure of Tatarstan. If you want to just get because the bald guy Simon doesn't really know anything about Tatarstan. Let's be real. He might be reading from some paragraph from some British college student who does, but here's an actual Tatarstani girl who had a grandma who was like through that. Yeah, I would just recommend watching these videos every time. Okay, check that one out. Confessions of a Tatarstan, survivors of Tatarstan, erasure gulag. And then this is another video. What's this one about?
Right, this is something a little bit less contentious, maybe. I just found it interesting. So again, this is Arte this this German French culture channel, which is one of the only publicly funded channels that people actually approve of, because they sometimes do decent documentaries, or basically what they do, from what I understand, is simply buy in documentaries from various film crews and then publish them. This is about Hungary and the thermal baths in Hungary. There's quite many. Maybe some people would think of Iceland and these thermal things, but there's many in Germany. There's actually also some in Austria, but somehow Hungary is even more famous for this. And this is simply about the task of a woman who's become mayor of her 100 individuals village, or 100 population village, trying to establish a thermal bath in her village in order to accelerate the economy. And I just basically wanted to point out, oh, there's many cool thermal baths in Hungary, and they may have all kinds of beneficial health effects, which, from what I understand, in Hungary may be especially important because, contrary to Austria, I don't know the details, but from all I understand, the social system in Hungary is not necessarily the strongest, or they don't give you the biggest payouts. However, what they do have is discounts for pensioners and so on, for public transport, and also for these thermal baths, which may have all kinds of health benefits. So almost like, naturopathy.
This is cool. I
things like
definitely
that.
want to go to one of these Hungarian hot spring bath nightclubs. This looks like a fun scene. Although they're probably all peeing in the pool. So there's that. Okay, and then what's this?
Yeah, this, maybe we briefly talked about it on the last part. This is just about Croatia and how Croatia is booming, and that, of course, this tourism is not 100% maybe only beneficial. Ever since Croatia joined the European Union, someone even wrote like prices rose by, I believe, even 70% or something like that. And all that I remember is when we were in Croatia, now 2 years ago, I believe, at this restaurant, how incredibly overpriced it was. And especially the salad, which I got, had like one cherry tomato and one piece of mozzarella. And they wanted to charge me $7 or $8. Yeah. So European Union has its maybe upsides for certain people who can benefit from it, and potential downsides for many others who don't necessarily get such a higher salary immediately, but living expenses may rise drastically once the euro is introduced anywhere. And similar thing happened with Austria, where they promised everyone, oh, it'll be great, it'll be fine, it'll be amazing. But of course, living costs skyrocketed ever since then. I'm not sure if it maybe would have happened regardless. There is something to say for sovereignty of currency if we would believe in the strict borders of the nation state, which I don't anyways. So yeah, it's all a big club, and almost every state gets to join. But of course, only those in the real club also get to benefit and disembowel industries, buy them up, or just greatly profit from increased tourism.
We love these concrete stone utilitarian. I mean, I feel like something wrong happened culturally in Croatia, because we just love this sort of empty brutalism. Just square, boring. What happened, man? We're worse off than the Italians. We got to do something. Save Croatia. The man claimed to be the brain. This man claimed that the brain creates consciousness, but his quantum consciousness theory faced 3 decades of criticism. New evidence now supports his claim. Dr. Stuart Hammeroff.
Yeah, this is just more info about this whole contentious question. What about consciousness? Where does it come from? Can it be localized? And yeah, my stance still is it cannot be localized from anything that I've researched. So just wanted to bring that up for anyone who wants to look deeper into this. Don't need to talk about it much because we spoke so much about AI and these things recently anyways. But if anyone's interested, they can check out the article.
Brain field stuff. Yeah, this sounds cool. All right, we'll definitely recommend this. Seems interesting. quantum entanglement in neurons may actually explain consciousness. That sounds like a good article. I
So
was a
how
child victim of the CIA's MKUltra mind control program.
Yeah.
Dr. Julian Engel.
This is quite interesting because at least from the way they present it here, it seems pretty legit in terms of witness account. And what she's basically saying is all kinds of individuals were involved or even sold off into these projects. And some of them survived, even managed to get a doctorate, even though they suffered amnesia in between and things like that. And now are whistleblowing on these things. I mean, on the one hand, to anyone who's researched this is nothing new. On the other hand, it's pretty cool that you have this interview with quite some views. And I do find it interesting that during the show, on the one hand, the co-host apparently was a victim of this himself, which is very interesting, but he doesn't remember yet, or he doesn't remember properly. She says she was able to remember some things, but they were very horrible. Yeah, people can listen to it. And what I also find interesting is that this Jimmy Dore, even though he apparently has quite a big channel, he's even saying, oh, he doesn't understand why not any bigger channels have already picked up the topic. I find that curious from someone with a channel over 1 million subscribers.
Yeah.
But yeah. Maybe he's also getting Dunbar limited in a way. I've never seen this guy before, I think. But the interview, I think, is well made and worth listening to.
Yeah. 130K views isn't bad for a week. I mean, but considering how big his channel is, it should be higher. But I guess they do. Yeah, they shut you down. So just keep growing. That's the answer. Interesting, though, because do you think that you haven't really looked into him before? You don't know if he's controlled op or anything?
I have no idea about him, to be honest.
Right,
maybe I saw his show once or twice somewhere in recommendations. I didn't do a deep dive on himself, but just from the conversation itself, it appeared pretty legit in terms of what they were discussing and honest as far as I can tell. But what do I know?
That's cool. All right, that's a good start. And then this isn't a third country anymore. This is California. Asman.
Yeah, this is from some time ago. Not sure if this is still relevant. I guess this was about the protests in California. Yeah, right. This was about the protests. And I want to say the very much obviously staged event once again for a good media op. I'm sure many people have seen this already. Which were these riots again? About the deportations, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right. So probably if you're in America, you've been covering, I don't know, probably if you're in the world, you've been watching this stuff, but it was pretty crazy. They convinced a lot of Californians to go out into the streets themselves. And there's a new app now. You heard about the app that will report if CNN was advertising it, an app that if you see ICE, then you can report it, and then it will alert people within 5 miles to stay in their homes and be careful to hide from ICE. And so Trump was saying he's going to sue CNN, but
a song of ice and fire.
To me, there's something like if you're using a radar gun to tell you if there's a police scanner and you have to slow down your car, that seems legal, right? So if someone's using an app to evade the police, that seems like it should be legal. And I think I'm probably taking the unique view here, because I think most people would say, hey, you shouldn't be allowed to know or to work together to evade a police state that's violently oppressing people, but at the same time, you are, and I'm going to say it, you should be allowed to use that app. I should be allowed to use that. I get that you're upset because these are Mexicans and you're racist or whatever it is, or you're like, I get it. But at the same time, you don't have the right to stop someone from using an app that will report if police are in your area. And that should be okay. And we should allow CNN to advertise that app if they want to. Is it kind of screwed up? Maybe. My bad. I just think in general, the alternative is far worse. Like if you're not allowed to tell people that you're worried that the police are coming towards you, then it's very close to, is there Jews in your basement? You're just like, you're really right at that limit, and you don't want that threshold to be broken. So the ICE app seems important to me. People don't like when I
Yeah.
say that.
Give ammunition to all sides, just to keep the topic in
That's true.
everyone's mind.
That's true.
This
Okay,
may be
that's like-
something we already looked at on Truth Social. Maybe I just put it there again because you had because you were
Trump
surprised
retweeted
about
the Biden
it.
clone. Yeah, this was interesting. Biden clones exist. Trump retweeted it, probably. I don't know. Or maybe he just wants to distract everybody. Or maybe he's just reading about this for the first time. Who knows how much Trump is spending his time reading National Enquirer magazines. But it seems like the kind of thing that Trump would be excited about was National Enquirer, Bat Boy and Biden clone and Hillary Clinton robot. I feel like all those things are things that would be entertaining as hell if I was the president. You have to imagine you're just more and more and more isolated at that point. You cannot be a man of the world and be a man of the people. At a certain point, you just can't. And that's why he's posting this stuff, because Truth Social is allowing him to do that on his very own social media platform.
But what would he be then if he's not a man of the people nor of the world? Or you're saying he's a man of the people?
No, I'm saying that if you're a monk in isolation, then you can't really be aware of what's going on.
Yes.
Right. So if you're spending like Joe Rogan, for instance, Joe Rogan is isolated now. And so it's going to take him months or years to catch up with videos that we're making through a friend who does a friend's thing that leads to a person
Obviously,
that he knows.
It takes him years.
It takes years. So you're never going to know something that we know right away, or that we're thinking about right away. We might not know it. Who knows? But we've been talking about Biden clones for what, almost 9 years since he ran in 2016, almost 10 years. Like, this is not new information. So if you're just now in 2025 coming up with a theory that's 9 years old, good for you, but it's cool. That's cool that the president finally heard about it. Like, that's great. Whether or not it's true or not, at least he's promoting this campaign. And so it might be looked at as disinformation. This is the kind of disinformation that dehumanizes. When Columbus and everyone were in the Americas, didn't they say that the Native Americans were basically not human? They were naive enough to go put their hands on the blades to feel the blood. They were so interested in the sword. So I feel like that's where we're at. We're just at dehumanization. And that's what I see every day from every angle. We're in a simulation. No one's real. It doesn't matter what you do. These people are only Arabs. The Arabs don't hate you because you're a person, because you're a Jew. The Germans, they're not very logical. They're too logical. They're robots. Everything is about dehumanizing.
Yes, well put. And that is truly, in any statement or any propaganda, the thing to watch out for. As soon as someone is dehumanizing someone, also, of course.
Terrorist is like, dude, I've been hearing that since I was a kid. See? Exactly. Columbus was Jewish, sounds about right. But the thing is, it works the other way too. You just did it. You're doing it in the comments. You're now just saying Columbus he's just Jewish. You just dehumanized. You don't realize it, but you did. You got to be careful with that. There's nuances to personalities. No offense, Carl, you're a good guy. Okay, so the breakup of Trump and Elon Musk is scripted and staged.
Yeah, so this is an interesting channel. Sometimes has quite interesting takes. From everything I can tell, whether you would say that the guy is on point or not, but appears to be very much independent. And he's just showing that it may well be, this even already from a few weeks ago, that this is also a staged thing. And what makes me even more prone to believe this is the fact that apparently, if that information is correct, but I think I even heard it on Austrian state broadcasting news walking by, which is that Trump now founded his own party. Elon Musk.
Elon Musk is starting the America Party. I'm just sorry. I'm just registering that Jake the asshole is from Santa Cruz. It never occurred to me, but I look at his hat and I'm like, God, that looks like something I would have seen at the Beltane or some sort of a, woods rave. And then I look at his shirt and it literally is a Santa Cruz shirt with a lighthouse on the shirt. So yeah, this guy is from my hometown, or at least he spends time there. I'm gonna have to analyze deeper. But yeah, the America Party. So let's see, Elon Musk. Is it time for the America Party? Where did he put it here? America Party. If you are an analog thinker, you compare Musk's New America Party to Ross Perot's third party run and conclude it's bad for Republicans. But that would only be the case if Musk someday backs an America Party candidate for president. And I don't think that's his plan. If Musk only backs individual senators and representatives for his new party, and as he has hinted, all he does is give Republicans a new way to get past politics to solutions the country wants and needs, such as deficit reduction. This beta version might sound buggy, but so expect bumps. So yeah, he's talking about kind of creating a party to manipulate the two-party system. That's what he's saying. And he's open about it. It's supposed to manipulate the two-party system. Some people think it's designed to get disenfranchised Democrats. I don't think it really is. Because at this point, if you're a disenfranchised Democrat, you're not going to go with Elon Musk. You know, like you're already pissed at him. But if he can maybe convince there are a lot of myopic people. There are some people out there that just see that they don't remember that Trump and Elon were working together. They might only remember.
I was about to ask, like, who would be left to be supporting anything that Elon does?
We call them the goldfish. You know, people that literally only remember yesterday. Or today. So if yesterday Elon Musk and Trump had a dramatic fight on Twitter, they might forget that 6 months ago they were friends, and because they obviously forget that 6 years ago they bought a Tesla because he was a hippy dippy Democrat liberal. You know, so as long as you're myopic, you might support it. Okay, my story of 3 days in a Thai detention center. Oh. Michelle,
Yes,
we didn't even bring this up because I didn't know how much he wanted to share about it. But of course, then I looked at his Substack and realized he wrote about this. Just for like a quick reference, if you guys didn't watch it, we did a great interview with Michelle Bowen.
approved by Stellium 7, which is quite a thing to achieve.
Yeah. So Michelle Bowen, just to catch you up, he started the Peer-to-Peer Foundation, and he's a really heterodox thinker. He's one of my favorite thinkers. And he was someone that Raph had met like 15 years ago, started the Flock Society in Ecuador. Is that right? I think so. And then we did the video. Let me just pull it up so you can see it. And if you haven't already seen it, you're crazy. You got to get out there and live your life. But, you know, don't miss our videos, for the love of God. So watch the Michelle Bowen's peer-to-peer cornucopia of the commons. I decided to call it that. It said the cornucopia. It said peer-to-peer cornucopia. Just seemed like the right move. And we talked a lot about a lot of things, but one of the things we didn't bring up is that after 20 years of living in Thailand from one visa to another visa, that Thailand's been getting kind of weird. And they basically took away his visa from him without a very decent explanation. And he's had to go, I forget where he's at, like Cambodia or Malaysia. Where did he end up again?
No, he's in Chiang Mai, Thailand.
He got back? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought, because they took his visa for a second and he had to deal with it.
Yeah, he was like in detention, as it says here, for a few weeks or something, which is
3 days.
Of course. Oh, okay, no, 3 days, but still insane.
Yeah, it's a lot for a guy who didn't do anything wrong to only ever help people. Yeah, it's pretty funny. But you know what? If you study enough Wilhelm Reich, 3 days in the Thai detention center might be some sort of therapy for like the weirdest of us. So good for him. He's lived in Thailand since 2003 October, and it's coming up on 20 years. And by all accounts, it has been, or 22 years. It's been a blessed time, but he explains here what happened. 67 years with 4 children from 2 marriages. 2 of my older kids from earlier marriages live in Paris, while my daughter is a legal expert finalizing her transformation to become a notary. Yeah, I would recommend reading his Substack for a lot of articles, but this is a very interesting story, and you probably do well to know about the kind of people he's hanging out with, from Bitcoin workers, Seapunk community, sailors living on yachts or on small sailboats, really. Escapees from the Moscow University Eco Village. There's a pretty interesting community expated in Thailand. I think we know several people, I think, who watch the show, and I'm trying to remember who they are, who are from Thailand, or rather live in Thailand right now. So there's definitely kind of an interesting community out there of expats from Russia, from Belgium, from England, from America, from Germany, and a lot of them seem to be very interesting, very intelligent, free thinkers that don't fit into any of the boxes in the West and are kind of waiting for society to catch up. And we look at the world as the first world is the British world and the American oligarchy. The second world was World 2.0. That was the Soviet Union. The third world was Tito's Yugoslavia. It was supposed to be kind of an option in between where you had American denim and social agriculture. And the fourth world, right? The fourth world was supposed to be Cambodia. And it's kind of spread to Thailand and parts of East Asia. And that's, I think, kind of the goal is the fourth world, because the fourth world can include everything from the first three. But yeah, it looks like it worked out for him, and we were able to talk with him. So that was good. All right. I investigated Africa's most wanted president, Ibrahim Traore.
Yeah, we actually showed this on APM. So I just wanted to bring it up again because this may well be, if this is allowed to continue, also because from what I understand, this president is Pan-African as well. And when was the last time we had someone with significant power who was Pan-African? At least in official mainstream history, it was Libya with Gaddafi.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, I mean, I want to say, of course, I don't know the details on the ground there. From the interviews done in this video, it seems people generally are very positive about this guy. I can't tell if he's also controlled up or what elite party is supporting him. Some must be supporting him or he couldn't survive, dare I say. He's getting help from Russia now. What I just want to say overall is, of course, I would want, well, Africa in general to finally be allowed to have their own technology and all of these things, because from what I understand, also through David Ewing Jr., one of the real bottlenecks actually is technological transfer. And that many countries, I guess also especially in Africa, simply aren't even allowed to have certain technologies. So it's really vital for them to have cooperations with states like Russia, and or also eventually finally get their own, factories going, get technology transferred, and hopefully then also be able to create governments that are not corrupt and don't lie to them. But then at the same time, we have similar issues in Europe and America. Maybe we have technology, but it's quite unevenly distributed. And I wouldn't be certain if there is no corruption, propagandization, or things like that happening in the West just as well. So you just have a nice souvenir. That's how I like to put it.
Burkina Faso is very interesting, French-speaking West African country that has an incredible history, and they have a legacy of keeping I want to call it a caste system, but that's not completely accurate. There are people in Burkina Faso that pass on legacy apprenticeships the same way Europeans did. And so there's the people that make the koras, the musical instruments, which guitars are a descendant of the kora, and to teach the music, they're the historians. So there's a complete syncopation between music and history for the Burkina Faso West African people. And I think they're one of the most interesting parts of Africa. But as you might have noticed, it's like a 90% coup government. Basically, I think it shows it right here. A little back, is that it? Right there? Yeah. It's basically every election.
Like 2 years ago, there was a coup, and then the government
election,
was very ineffective, and then the current Captain Traore took over because he was the deputy or something like that.
Basically, it's kind of like survival of the warrior class, because every single government that you can think of has been a coup government, except for this one. You can see, look at the one politician.
Although I have to say, as the example with Austria and Sebastian Kurz, who we brought up several times because he's now involved with this Israeli cyber defense company, by now it is pretty much official that this Sebastian Kurz, who became elected and chancellor in Austria in 2017, I believe, he literally couped his own party by fudging certain survey results for newspapers. There were huge scandals about this. Of course, he himself never really was held responsible for it, but he basically internally couped the sentiment of his party through, from what I understand, fudged surveys and things like that. He kicked out the then head of the party, And he also ensured that when he was acceding to the throne of the Austrian People's Party, ÖVP, he also had it signed that he would have special executive powers. None there call it dictatorial. And then he proceeded to win the election. So even here, it is a matter of definition what is defined as a coup. Of course, one may say it is a lot better, at least if no one gets hurt physically. However, even here, if we look at the medical system and all of these things, it's simply a more indirect harm that may be produced. Yeah, not sure if either of them is what I would prefer in terms of progression and development of governments, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So just to know when things were so special. And just so we don't forget about it, thank you, Travis, for the $5.
Do I have that still? Oh my God. Can I find it? Where is it? Oh, it's in here. No? Oh, Saga. While we're doing that, the Sahara Desert was lush and green about 5,000 years ago. They're just now finding records of it. 7,000-year-old natural mummy of a female found in Takor Kori in western Libya. Fox Saga! It's been a while since I heard the Box Saga. Box Saga. Sounds of shape and form. Strength is a new norm, huh? This is what happens to you because everyone thinks AI doesn't have any soul. As if, like, you didn't sell your soul. And AI has it in a bottle. Okay, we're good. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. Did I lose it? Oh, here it is. Sorry. So, Occult Art with Susan Faraday.
Yeah, this one I still have to watch. I just thought I'm 100% certain this will be very interesting. I kind of want David Charles Plate to watch this, and at some point maybe you can sync out on this. Yeah, I still have to watch it, so I can't talk on it, but I find it very interesting that she's putting in Klimt, who has quite amazing art, and it could explain quite a lot, at least for me, why I find that art interesting. You know, most likely there's some occult strange connections in the back. Of course, we have buildings like this is a session. To each age, it's art. To art, it's freedom. It really very much seems as if many of the really nice buildings in Vienna were actually built at the turn of the 20th century, so around 1900. All of these artists, supposed philosophers and writers meeting in the coffee shops, the coffee houses at the time. That's at least the story that they give us today.
There were cool buildings, but apparently they burnt down, right? So there was a beautiful opera house that Klimt designed that was burnt down. The Viennese opera house that was destroyed, right?
I don't even know about that, to be honest.
Klimt opera house burned down. The mystery of the burnt Klimt works collection destroyed. Final corporate. I forget. I'll have to look into this more. But yeah, there was one, and then I think there's pictures of his design for it, and then a bunch of the art was destroyed during the last days of the Second World War. Major Gustav Klimt art collection was burned. Probably just pulled apart, taken. I don't know if they were really destroyed. Probably someone has them somewhere. But yeah, that's the story, that they were destroyed. I think there's one that was destroyed at the beginning of World War I. Also, the opera house that he designed. I'll have to find that and bring it back to you. But yeah, a World War II castle fire destroyed a bunch of his best work. Of course, kind of a bummer. Okay, and then Stephen Greer's link to Israel. Oh God, really?
So of course, Stephen Greer has been questioned for quite some time. He's done some, I would say, somewhat interesting documentaries. One of the main thrusts or ideas which he's seeding, which I don't think is completely irrational is the question how many of the supposed UFOs are actually government vehicles, for lack of a better term. However, here, and this is quite a popular show, I believe, so again, take it with a grain of salt, but very interesting, the connections of Stephen Greer, and also they go into his biography, and maybe not everything he says is completely correct. I've heard different things about Stephen Greer. I never met him. However, given how incredibly popular he is, and at the very least he's kept this UFO topic alive, maybe there's something to it. What do you think about Stephen Greer?
He's too ripped not to be kind of a shill, but I like it. I mean, I like how scary he looks. You know, I mean, have you seen how ripped he is? Like, he's got like decent muscle mass.
Some even say he's like a reptilian or something for whatever reason. What they also claim is that a lot of the content may be boosted with fake engagement, which reminds me there is this recent controversy, we brought it up on last show, about Stop Killing Games. And I may have mentioned this on a different show, that many of at least these gaming podcasters or something are related to this agency called Night. I think it's called Night Agency, Night Talent Agency. Maybe not him, but it's just always interesting when there's any feud. Yeah, night.co is the site. Maybe he's not there, but like many individuals, I believe, maybe even Asmo, I'm not exactly sure, but quite a few. And that's, of course, always relevant to understand. Night.
Oh, yeah, Night Talent Agency. Yeah. They're all part of Night. For sure. Well, that makes sense too. I think he's just been a military cleared for weird guy for a long time. So he had like decent declassification. So he was very valuable to companies that could pay him to get access to his classification authority. Like he has his clearance. So paying for his clearance access was how he kind of kept going. And at a certain point, I think his clearance ran up. And so that's when he started doing all of these talks and everything, because that's basically what he's known for. I'm not sure if I wouldn't say he's legit, but at the same time, he's at very least the chill that they're putting in the front. So he's probably very useful for gradual disclosure. I don't know for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, just to steer the conversation.
Obviously, is an alien scientist. He's got 100+ videos probably just talking about Greer. And he has a lot of information looking into Greer. So I would say we can get him on if you want to talk about Greer and what his opinions are. He definitely has a few, for sure.
That'd be interesting, yeah. And so just to give a rundown, some of the YouTubers and digital creators managed by Night Media, Kai Cenat, whom I would never know if I wouldn't have sporadically used Twitch. And then I was just like, who is this guy with so many viewers? And then I just saw him like unboxing things. And I was like, okay, wow, people watch this. Hassan Piker, ZHC, the Costco guys. Okay, never heard of them. Formerly Mr. Beast. Wow. Until 2024. Theo Vaughn, Ethan and Gila Klein. Never heard of them. Phil DeFranco. And then also this Ludwig, Nick, Slime, and Aiden, The Yard. Ludwig was involved with Pirate Software and this whole controversy now with off-brand games and Stop Killing Games. So quite a few. And it's just relevant if there is a feud going on, you may want to check, are these individuals being sponsored by the same talent agency? Maybe this could slightly influence their take on any subject matter. It's just good to
know. I mean, what's his name? The guy who started it, Cooperstein. Oh, well, I guess Reed Dusher too. But Reed Dusher, I don't really know much about this guy. But I know Cooperstein. And isn't it, they're basically just a Israeli talent agency, as far as I understand.
Oh, yeah.
Which is interesting. Right. I only bring up because of Hassan, right? Hassan Piker is this super anti-Israel, he's anti-Semitic, and he's done a lot of videos promoting Palestine and ISIS and terrorist organizations, right? Which is whatever. It's whatever, you know, like you do what you want to do.
It doesn't matter which side you take. It's only important that you take a side so the conflict can continue.
Yeah, but he's getting paid by Israelis to promote anti-Israeli rhetoric.
Yeah, well,
and
I'm
their
really sorry,
enemies.
Andreas, but isn't it that there is even mainstream documentaries of former Israeli Mossad agents that are
Mhm.
directly saying that yes, they are very much involved in at least supporting, but from what I understand, actually creating Hamas. So
Yeah, that's kind of where we're going with this. So shady as it can be, to create the enemy that you have to defeat, kind of a thing. Hassan's pretty unhinged, and to get that unhinged and be protected on Twitch, and I mean, he's clearly being protected because the things he said are violating all sorts of terms and services, but they're allowing him to do it. So, okay, consumerism is a perfection of slavery. Professor Zhang Zhuqin.
this randomly ended up in my YouTube recommendations. He's basically explaining, yeah, the ideas of consumerism, and he's giving the example, look guys, you're all students here, you work together and all of that, but what if I gave each of you 1 million? Wouldn't you start hating each other and competing for more resources, competing for the bigger car and all of these things? And then you can live a life, as I guess in a way too many people are doing to some extent, and at the end of the day you may have all the material things, but you still wonder why you're lacking a sense of purpose, because maybe materiality is not what it's all about. And he's been bringing up the example, I mean, I guess he's in China, and saying, yeah, don't you guys realize why you're even going to university? Aren't you also doing that in order to get a good job, in order to get a lot of money and all of that, when what is it really? It's just printed paper. And of course it can solve and help with a few things. However, as the ultimate end all be all of accumulation, it doesn't seem to have a lot of purpose to it. And as brought up on the last show where my Stellium7 was asking if I'm supporting universal basic income, there are these studies where they claim, at least for Western audience or something, if you earn about $60,000 or more, there is no significant increase in your quality of life. And I mean, I hope we have listeners that are even earning a lot more than this. Welcome. And then maybe, I guess this would be the point when one would want to consider, do I want to invest in a company that's really doing something great and helping? Do I want to invest in a charity? Is there things I can do with it, which maybe ultimately may make me happier than simply buying another sports car or whatever people are doing? Something to consider.
Worth it. And this is he's the new Nostradamus, they say. Oh.
Yeah, so apparently he predicted, whatever this means exactly, this Iran Israel conflict. So that's, I only found this article after I saw the video because I just wanted to do a quick lookup on him, and that's the first thing that came up.
It doesn't seem like that crazy to predict what was obvious. I mean, I was writing about Iran last year too, but I guess everyone's
too bad they wouldn't put you up there. It's like Andreas,
fucking Economic Times. Ugh. Okay, the royal families of Hollywood. Go. Miles Williams Mathis. Oh, Brad Pitt's genealogy. Oh, what we got?
So this is really something where I finally have to get to and basically read all of his papers. I read through his Tartaria paper, where he's got some interesting takes. He's got things on, we brought up John F. Kennedy and the potential assassination hoax, nuclear hoax, many different things he's speaking of, which are very interesting. And here he's simply pointing out that it may well be that Brad Pitt is related to some Irish family, also called the Pitts. And simply put, even here, he's entertaining this idea, and everything from what I've learned so far, there may be quite something to it, which is that if you're part of the elite, and maybe, I don't want to say it like this, you're not maybe incredibly apt at other things or something, then one of the lower rungs of that whole scheme is you just become an A-list actor. And I'm sure there is quite a few that can act amazingly. I'm not such a cinema buff or analyzing it that much. I only sometimes see characters and I'm like, oh, that fits well. I think this character is cool in a movie or in a series. But just to consider also here, it may well be that not everyone can make it. Not only that you may need to submit yourself to all kinds of strange rituals, but also that it may simply be dependent on your bloodline, how far you can get within these spheres.
Would explain a lot about his relationship with Angelina Jolie. Meant to marry. All right. Well, so that was. We went too far, didn't we? Let's go 2, 3, parts 3. Okay, and then consciousness, Stephen Greer, royal families, and now we're back to East Turia, back to Austria. Okay, I'll pull up some of these too for history. So let's go to Pleite Kaufhauser und Geisterbaustellen.
And this is just yet another rehash from Rene Benko, the real estate investor who in the end even owned the Chrysler building, at least on paper. And then everything came crashing down, and all these supermarket employees, or how do you call it? Strip mall, basically. These were the last strip malls, if you want. And maybe there was even some higher force which was accelerating this or allowing this to happen. But basically, maybe the final blow to the last vestiges of traditional strip malls in Germany, called Karstadt and Kaufland, because he bought them. And then what he did is he increased the rent. And because the rents were increased, he could get higher valuations for the same buildings, get more credit, buy the next bigger thing. And that's apparently how he worked his way up. He also had his own private party every year with the most important figures from Austrian politics and industry. And supposedly, none of his collaborators ever suspected that this could be a huge, how would you call it? Maybe not exactly a scam, but reminds me of Bernie Madoff somehow. You know, you basically promise people something, you're doing something else in the back. And as long as people keep paying in, Ponzi scheme almost. I mean, it's a different thing in a way,
scheme, basically.
But in a way, it's comparable. Yeah. And now
creating a false value. Yeah.
And
then eventually it just collapses at a certain point, right?
Exactly.
Because there's no value there, and they can't keep up with it, and they're not making enough money to pay this.
Exactly, and all the businesses that have to pay higher rent, of course, over time, they can't afford it anymore, so they go bankrupt. And then, of course, you have all kinds of regular employees holding the bag, who instead of maybe telling them 2 years early or whatever, look, maybe the strip mall thing is not going to go so great long term, or we need to reduce costs or something, they just crash it against the wall. So
the collapse of the mini malls and the strip malls of Europe, it's catching up with us everywhere you go. Pretty soon there's just these giant infrastructure rich places that are just ghost towns, industrial brutalist ghost towns. And then there'll be little ladies like this selling little wooden figurines out in front of these empty buildings. Happy Ramadan. Pretty sweet. Brief Bombenterror in Österreich. Is this the... No, this is years ago. Okay.
Yes, this is quite some time ago. I somehow stumbled upon this, and this is just basic history education for Austria. Apparently, about 30 years ago, and from all I could tell, but I haven't looked too deep into this, this was a real thing, or as real as it gets, or it was a very well created psyop. Basically, an individual claiming to want, I think it was actually anti-immigrant or something like that. Yeah, it was anti-immigrant because this guy called Franz Fuchs sent bombs by mail to various organizations. And it even, and also this from everything I could tell was a real thing, blew up the hand of the then mayor of Vienna, Helmut Zilk. So they were apparently real victims of this. And yeah, quite a strange story. And also interesting because since then, there was never any reports of any bombs in the mail at all. So, yeah, I can't say.
But this kind of meant that we had to start looking into everyone's mail, which is a big thing I've noticed in Austria, is that they check everyone's mail. Like the Viennese police and Austrian police are constantly posting on Twitter that they were scanning someone's mail and they found some teenagers bought in drugs, or that someone was buying some paraphernalia that was illegal. And more valuably, that's usually the excuse, they're arresting people that bought some electronics that they weren't paying a tariff on. I mean, something as benign as that. So they really are like, hey, but we needed this technology to scan all the luggage for bombs, you know?
Yeah, that's quite possible that there's several angles on this. All I know is that last week I finally managed to send some of the water-soluble garlic tincture, link in the description, to Jim.
Sweet.
And I was like, oh, cool. I'm just taking these 2 bottles, I'm sending it to him. I'm just going to the post office. I'm just going to drop it off here. And what happens? The post office man looks at me and is like, where is your import form? And I'm like, what are you even talking about? Where is your import form? And apparently, I discussed this with some other acquaintances recently, up until a few years ago, there was a free threshold. So basically up to $200 value or something you could just send. But now, if I want to send anything to the US for any amount of value, I need to fill in a customs declaration form, almost like even though, for example, as a European, I would not need a regular, or I would not need to apply for a visa in the US. However, what you do need to do is you need to fill out this online terrorist form. You know what I'm saying? ESTA, I
Yeah.
think it's called. Yeah. So somewhat similar, that now no matter what amount of goods or whatever you would want to send, even privately, you need to fill in an import form. So interesting change. I don't know. I just think it's kind of, I don't know, hilarious or sad. What are we now? Are we in a globalized world now, or what's going on? That even within supposed first world countries or regions like Europe and America, you cannot just freely travel. You need a visa. And yeah, it's, I don't know. It's just obvious how they want to keep everyone locked into their own mindset, into their own propaganda. So on the larger chessboard, all of these populations can somehow be used for the games they want to play. Because of course, if everyone were aware of all the information of all the other regions and countries, you most likely couldn't play the population so easily and propagandize them.
Yep, these fake walls, better than walls, ideological walls. Oh, Ursula, bye bye, baby. Right? This kind of was funny. I mean, how do you get away with having an impeachment and then retiring? Basically, shouldn't she have been like arrested, or at least have her clothes ripped from her body and everyone just yelled shame, 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 like Game of Thrones as they marched her out? Like, what am I missing here?
That would have been great, and kind of in context as a Game of Thrones, reference, politics as a Game of Thrones, or politics, world power as a Game of Thrones. Politics, of course, is only the lower rung. This is again from Miles Mathis, where he's investigating von der Leyen's heritage, and it may well be, I don't remember the details now, but also here, it's not random that she came into this position. So there's background forces, of course, and maybe even blood lineage. I forgot what he said about her exactly. Let me see. So to anyone who doesn't know, Ursula von der Leyen basically was, some would say, the president of the European Union. I mean, technically, she was president of the European Commission, which again reminds me too much of a communist system, because in the communist system, you have a Politburo, which is issuing the laws, and then the people can just suck it up. And it's actually similar within the association called European Union, where the only body that is allowed to create legislature is the European Commission, not the parliament, as it should be, or as it would be in many of the member states. Even though also here, also in Austria, most of the propositions of law are made by the ruling party, and then only confirmed by the parliament.
Your face is so terrifying. Maybe just because like the amount of time she waxed her mustache, or I don't know what it is, but she just has this like, she's got that dragon tattoo, abuser vibe. She's just like an evil vibe. That's just my feelings. Okay, that's how I feel about it.
I'm lucky to say I never looked at her in such a close-up fashion, but
even if I close my eyes and I hear her speak, it's not just the horrible things she says, it's the way it comes out sounding evil. She's just so evil, bro. She's so evil. I mean, that's just my
There's
opinion, man. All
there's
right.
one maybe popular opinion I can insert here, which is somewhat background information. So on the one hand, everyone in the European Parliament and in these whole institutions, nobody really liked her, but still it was clear
Nobody.
she would get re-elected. So again, giving credence to this research by Miles Matthews that maybe something else to it. And also, due to some friends I have, I know a tiny bit about what's going on within the Green parties. And there is one great example of an individual who worked in relevant position for the Green Party, in this case, a female, and actually even negotiated as the Green Party with the Austrian People's Party, formerly the party of Sebastian Kurz, whom I brought up earlier, in order to do some things like, how do you call that? Like equality, for women's equality laws, basically. And this woman was negotiating these things. And some of the texts that she wrote and briefings and actual legislative text now literally is within the Austrian law. However, then later, when she was reapplying to work for the Green Party in Austria, what they did is they said, oh, we're going to look at your CV. Oh, very nice. You worked for this and this individual in the Green Party. Oh, but more or less with the allegation, you are just a woman. Do you really want to tell me you worked as anything else than some type of regular, low-level, menial task secretary? Even though things that she wrote literally are within Austrian law right now. And then what they said is, oh, well, we are sure you did nothing too political. So basically, we want to pay you a lot less because you were merely a secretary. And how do we know this? Because during your time in these, which you claim supposedly political position or politically relevant position in terms of assisting parliamentarians and things like that, you didn't publish anything. You didn't do any scientific publications, even though things she has written literally are Austrian law now. So just to tell you about the hypocrisy and bigotry, I think you would call it, even within the Green Party of all places, where they basically discriminate against you because you're a woman, even though some of the things you wrote are now law in Austria in order to support equality for women and in the workplace. So that is incredibly amazing to me.
It's interesting. I hadn't really looked into her connections to the Red Army faction, right? Which was the West German leftist terrorist group that was known for not just breaking open prisons and bombing innocent people in nightclubs and, you know, military personnel, but also like the U.S. Army base at Ramstein, right? The air base they bombed. So there's a lot of interesting things associated with the RAF, and there's an interesting conspiracy about West Germany kind of swallowing up East Germany for the purpose of saving West Germany, which was on its way to collapsing. A lot of people look at it like, oh, well, the DDR was collapsing, so we needed to help them. But if you really look at it, the DDR was doing fine. West Germany was declining. The economy was declining. There was the introduction of East Asian manufacturing Germany couldn't keep up with. They could only hope to make luxury goods for the rich. How many rich people are there? And the DDR still had higher birth rates. Germany's birth rates were collapsing already in the 80s. So there was a hope that by kind of bringing in the East German politics through the Green Party, they could kind of save West Germany. And yeah, Ulrika Meinhof, look at that face. All right. Western
I
terrorism.
believe even her or someone else who in official history was actually involved in some of these terroristic acts recently spoke at the Wiener Festwochen. This is an annual event in Vienna where you have a few weeks with lectures and so on. And one of the individuals directly involved in RAF was speaking there, which I find interesting. And of course, this caused a huge uproar with the right-wing politicians. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm fascinated by the left, and I wouldn't say that the right was much better, but it's very interesting because we now forget what left-wing terrorism looked like in the 70s and 80s. And it was pretty crazy, right? It was these hyper intellectual college kids working for these billionaire lobbyist groups associated with the Soviet bloc, and they were also running for the CIA was doing a lot of this through the Weather Underground, and they were doing things that were like introducing military grade designer poisons and toxins into subway systems, right? Things like that. And it's just interesting to wonder about who gave them access to this stuff. I see a lot of anti-Semitism in this particular narrative by this this PDF we're looking at. I don't think that's completely fair, but there's definitely an interesting correlation between Israeli Mossad and the left wing, particularly in Europe, and the destabilization.
But even here, who funded and controls Mossad?
Right. So that's fun. Okay, and then this was Kan sich Österreichs Militar verteidigen.
Yeah, this is a bit scary. And again, going back to Israel in a way, or to the Israeli model, this guy is from Wiener Zeitung, which is, I believe, one of the oldest newspapers in Austria, even though, as you can see, their YouTube channel is not exactly massive. And he's speaking of the question whether or not Austria can defend itself. What would be your guess?
No. Yeah, no. What do you think? I mean, Austria could, they just won't. Am I wrong? What would you say?
Well, Austria totally can. And again, I want to bring this up, not that anyone still adheres to it, but technically Austria's security is guaranteed by the Allied powers.
That's the truth.
Which
and
nobody
and the Axis power, because it's the best place to trade or for people to do a meeting, right?
Exactly. Here they speak about it militarily. Of course, militarily, Austria can't do anything. I recently even heard if there were a plan to defend anything, the only thing that could realistically be defended is the Alps. However, what I actually want to point out here they show how much they're spending, and now they're spending more. They're so happy now because they're going to buy Sky Shield, which is some NATO rocket defense system, which of course wouldn't at all increase the likelihood of Austria being the target of any type of attacks if we have a NATO actual active weapon system within Austria, even though it's supposedly only for defense. And they can
move the trade agreement to Turkey, and then that would be the end of Austria's sort of safe zone. Austria's always been a safe zone because you got the different powers that can be here simultaneously, including Russians. You'll often see Russians and Germans and Americans and everyone having their little meetings here. And if they just took that away, then there would be no reason for it to be defensive. I think that's the thing, is you don't need to defend Austria unless you do something like that and make it a target. It's not a target right now. It's already protected ideologically.
So Austria should be neutral, but just listen to the Austrian, especially the current Austrian foreign minister. She's completely crazy NATO. Well, they call her NATO Beate. Beate is her first name, not to use any other word starting with a B. And also we've shown quite some time back that she's been attending the Bilderberg meeting together with, I believe, still Treichel, maybe Treichel or some other high-level banker who was then the chief of the Austrian Control Bank, or controlling, however you call that, Kontrollbank. Yes, and Austria is not formally in NATO, but Austria is in the so-called Partnership for Peace. And it also has to be said that quite a few times also recently, when there were weapons shipments or other things to Ukraine, they basically went through Austrian land or airspace. And if it were not for certain maybe right-wing politicians and just generally for aware citizens that filmed it, nobody would have made a fuss about it. Even though, from what I understand, technically, if you are a neutral country, you should not allow any weapons shipments to go through your neutral territory. So, of course, here also, I would say these are all just names and things to put forward, or we're neutral or we're not. I think realistically, in terms of de facto, Austria, of course, is not neutral at all. But then we always have to ask the question, just as we gave the example earlier with Hamas and Israel, isn't it true that both sides somehow are supported by the same measure, just in order to have opponents and to be able to have a conflict. And anyone who's
Right.
caught in between just gets allocated accordingly, whatever helps best to keep the fear going. And yeah, the thing that was scary about this particular tidbit here is that at some point they interview some military guy or some consultant or somebody, and he's basically saying, oh, in order for Austria to properly defend itself, we should actually look at the Israeli model of conscription. And he's saying, because right now we only have 6 months of mandatory conscription, military service for every
So we should
Austrian male.
really make
And
everyone
he's
2
saying,
years.
well, at the least it should be a year, you know, and things like that. And I'm like, really, at this time, you're bringing up Israel as a positive example if you want to live in peace?
Look how much
That's
peace is
curious.
happening there. Yeah. Oh, nationalized military service in Austria and Germany. That's what we need. That just get everything back to the way things were.
And Germany
1940.
suspended it for quite a few years now. In Austria, it is still ongoing, but only 6 months, where, of course, you can only get very limited training. The regular training you get is about 6 weeks. And of course, even then, it would generally be assumed that unless you are a more professional, specially trained soldier, you would do background tasks, right? Or service tasks.
Right.
However, still, the fact of the matter remains there shouldn't be any war at all. This is all due to either one could say a failure of diplomacy, and or because of some higher powers just want to play around and create conflicts to shape the world according to their liking, or to keep propping up Europe so we can still have cheap resources from third world countries, strange things like that.
You saw Pauly Shore's in the army now, right? Where like Pauly Shore joins the army. It's like made by Hollywood Pictures. You know?
I only know this song, You're in the Army Now. Is that from that movie or?
I don't think it is. Maybe. I think they might have used it. Andy Dick and Pauly Shore with their long hair standing outside of this sort of like recruiting place, and then they shave their heads and make them join the military, and they're just supposed to be in the reserves, you know, reserved for if they actually had a conflict. They're like only if there's actually a war, not realizing that America's in like 13 wars at a time. You know, like since 1945, we've never been not in war, right? So they get sent to do some crazy Desert Storm Iraq stuff, and they're trained to be like water boys that do like water purification. But it's a highly worth your time movie to see if you want to see like what it's like for guys who just are not they're non-violent, they're just smart enough to learn how to run and operate heavy machinery for the company, and they're put into like the most dangerous circumstances possible, right? Because and no one's going to hear about it because no one cares if there's only like 10,000 troops or something like that deployed to some small place that you've never heard of. They don't even consider it a war most of the time. So, and we're back to the bread. Okay, encrypted reality, interpreting histories, repeating patterns.
This I would like everyone to take a look at. It's of course linked below through the Rien ne va plus site. Encrypted reality, this is actually from Michael Anthony, whom we've had on, who spoke about the portrait of a spy master, Renaissance man, who's living in Colombia. And he's recently compiled this. I yet have to read it, but here he tries to basically condense and explain his research and his reasoning, which also then led to Portrait of a Spy Master, the book. Anyone who's interested, we've done 2 shows on Portrait of a Spy Master. Michael Anthony Alberto, I believe is his complete name, book. So everyone can check this out. Also, he's a Fomenko reader, so he's up to speed. And there you can check out his insights. He just recently sent this to me. I still have to read it, but I thought I'd put it there right away.
Very cool. And then Hypothesis X185, New Chronology, Andrew Marful.
Yeah, this is interesting because it is, if I understand correctly, also a visual representation of the new chronology by Fomenko and Nosowski, which may make it easier for certain people to understand what's going on. For example, if you go to minute 6 or 7, yeah, exactly. You have these charts. That's certainly something to look at. I'll look at it again as well to be able to speak more about this. but it's certainly great someone has actually made some graphics, because graphics, of course, often are easier to understand than just a wall of text.
This is great. Okay, I'll go over this. And we can look at this more next time. And then Arab slave trade, right? The never-ending Arab slave trade, the Atlantic slave trade, Slavic migrations to Americas. Yodi Jones.
This video I only noticed because Yodi Jones tagged me in his video. You can see it's a very small channel, but still I'm like, well, if someone's going to tag me, of course I'm going to take a look. And what he's saying here is the question whether the Atlantic slave trade actually is the Arab slave trade, whether that's the same thing. I can't speak on this in detail, but I find the point very curious, because several times it has been called into question whether the standard story of Afro-Americans all being brought with slave ships is actually correct in this way, or whether there's something else to it. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if also here we've been lied to and the actual history has been obfuscated.
If you go to, that was ridiculous. Come on now. Portuguese rock. Okay, there's a rock here that's called Spanish rock, but now I guess they call it Portuguese rock. It's supposed to be the earliest sign of human visitation, talking about the Portuguese slave trade in Bermuda. The more you look at it, the more you'll find evidence that this is a much older rock in a much older place. Let's see if I can show you the Bermuda Bastion Fort. Maybe I can look that up. If you go to Bermuda, you'll see an area that they claim was built by Europeans, but almost certainly was built by Moors and represents the proto-European slave trade, or the African Sephard slave trade. And this would have been a slave trade that existed even further back in time. And this might prove some people's point that there were Moorish African Americans, right? When we say black people in America that were native, indigenous to America, the Algonquin Indians, for instance, having some connections with the Moors to Africa and Brazil, and having a triangular trade network. And this is complicated to call a slave trade network because, you know, slavery meant something different at that time. It was basically like indentured servitude, apprenticeship. You get to like move and colonize different places. Imagine Elon Musk talking about going to Mars and what you're trading away to get to be on that boat or that spaceship, right? The idea is that you'd like trade your life away essentially to work for the company. This is not any different. This is exactly the same model. So something to look at is the Spittal Pond Nature Reserve and Portuguese Rock in Bermuda. And you'll see it particularly in between America and Africa and Europe and South America, like between the two hemispheres, there's a number of islands, and they're famous for slave trades. They have a lot of really interesting bastion forts, star forts, and there's rocks there with all sorts of interesting symbolism that's way older than anything written in Portuguese. And of course, Portuguese is interesting. We call it Spanish rock, but the Portuguese rock kind of proves that this is Ladino or Arabic. It's written in Arabic maybe. And that just shows you how much older this really is. Okay, so then we got there. We've got a few more of these. Let's do this one here. Okay. Jared Booster, the construction photos of Bucharest Palace of Parliament.
This is highly interesting because in official history, this was only built starting from 1984. And even before I had been looking into this research deeper, I was aware that Tito built this amazingly megalomaniac palace. However, the story of the architect is very suspicious because she supposedly won the competition at like 26 as a female nonetheless, even though one could argue Soviet Union affiliated states were even faster in this idea of equal rights or equal opportunities for men and women. And there also, from what I understand, appears to be a lack of proper photo documentation, which of course is particularly strange because this is very recent. So this is not something from 1900. Yeah, I can't give a verdict on this at all, but I just found the story very interesting to take a look at. Later on, the architect actually became member of parliament in Romania for a few years. But yeah, right. What's the crazy story about this is that they constructed this, and then supposedly the architect, this lady, claimed and said, well, actually, the art or whatever, or the construction or something is my intellectual property. So I am now suing the government to destroy all records and documentation of the construction.
What?
Which is kind of insane. And what's more insane, that this was allowed to pass. So this kind of makes me think there is more to it without being able to say what it is.
Pretty suspicious, right? And then they remove the government, so there's no memory of what happened. Also,
Right,
Uranus
exactly.
Hill. Uranus Hill is a very strange name, right? So Uranus Hill in Bucharest, like named after Uranus, the god, the planet, the astrological sign
for revolution. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't have too big of a comment on this one. I know that they tore out allegedly huge neighborhoods in order to build this, and so this was a major issue for people, was how many people were displaced supposedly. But you look at the pictures before and it's already pretty trash. So,
and from what I had heard, even today many of the rooms are supposedly unused or even inaccessible for parliamentarians and things like that. So it makes you wonder what could possibly be going on there.
Fascinating. And the new chronology interview, eh? A new chronology interview.
Yeah, always good to check out and gather more information about it. I don't even remember exactly what they're speaking about here, but yeah, Sergei Belobaba always does these great translations of flamenco interviews. I cannot recommend his channel highly enough for anyone who wants to learn more about flamenco in English.
Super important. I'll have to listen to this one through. Save this one here. Everyone listen to Sergei's interview, dubbed in English. Mr. Beast got sued by the Mexican government for this video.
Yeah, I believe I recently heard that, which also seems like a ploy to me, especially because, at least from what I can gather from what David Ewing Jr. has spoken about, it may well be that also the story about this pyramid is not exactly what we are led to believe. Also, I can do the promotion. We still have to do proper interviews because David is kind of busy these days, but he has published a new book actually on the Egyptian pyramids. So there's a new book by David Ewing Jr. on the Egyptian pyramids. And from what he has told me so far, this may literally be the cornerstone of the New World Order and one of the very foundational concepts or symbols that this whole modern world is based upon. And of course, everyone knows, get out your $1 bill, not sure if I have one somewhere. There may be a good reason why the pyramid is there. So the Egyptian pyramids in particular may be the cornerstone of the New World Order in a certain way. And also here, this Chichen Itza, I guess this is Chichen Itza as well. There's also some questions surrounding this, whether this is really as old as we are led to believe. I just find it strange wherever Mr. Beast shows up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And he's getting in trouble without putting the video, without having the government review the video before he put it up.
Yeah.
Crazy.
If you can believe it.
Yeah.
This is a documentary by Lawrence Southern about the issues in South Africa and the, I'm not sure how to call it, racism against whites. Is someone allowed to say that this exists?
I think
Seems to be a real thing. Genocide.
Yeah.
Yeah, not claiming that. I don't know Lawrence Southern, so I can't speak to her integrity or other things she's been up to. But this documentary certainly is interesting to take a look at, and also seems, from what I could gather, genuine enough that there is a real issue. And we've seen the demonstrations or political rallies of certain politicians in South Africa that seem to be, how should I say, needlessly racist against whites. And yeah, it's always the same issue. Have people divided you can have them in conflict, you can control society. Let's not dare to just live together regardless of skin or something, and just have everyone do their contributions according to their capacity and interests. Wouldn't that be a radical idea? And wouldn't that be much more beneficial for economy and society and peace overall?
Yeah, it's crazy that they keep living there after, like, if you watch this documentary, you'll be like, why are you still in South Africa? Get the hell out. Stop being there. Crazy. But they had big farms, and they thought that they could maybe be safe. They protected themselves. I mean, it's crazy, dude. I mean, I get it if you live someplace your whole life and you love that place, but oh my God, it's
And I
completely
think
insane.
the main issue that often gets conflated, and I can't speak to it because I've never been to South Africa, or I don't know the details in this case, but what seems to me is that too often a small to medium business owner gets conflated with the immensely huge government-backed contractors, propagandists, and industry moguls. And then it's kind of like, yeah, sure, these super big corporations, they are harassing you, they are taking your money, they are enslaving people, no question. However, at the same time, at least as long as we have a somewhat capitalist system, and even if it were different, you still need competent managers and people that actually know what they're doing. Because I believe one of the issues there, if I'm not mistaken, is also that if you were to kick out all the white farmers, for example, if they have most of the expertise, it could actually damage your overall state economy as well. So, and I think there was a different country, I forgot which one, maybe also in Africa, where they had a similar issue, a documentary I watched, some other country. Oh, I think even Zimbabwe.
Yeah,
Maybe
Rhodesia,
even
I was gonna say.
Zimbabwe. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, there is no Rhodesia anymore. There's barely a Zimbabwe. They really screwed that up. Vienna, Austria, 1920s in color. I do love NAS. They have some restored footage here, AI restored footage. It looks pretty good.
In a way, I'd almost say it looks the same as today. Well, maybe a few less of the columns and ornaments, but quite a few of the buildings still are very similar, which is why Vienna is particularly nice. And ever since living here, it always made you wonder. I mean, I live here since I'm born, but since I was born, but yeah, it gives these old world vibes, or at the very least, a time where people actually cared about constructing nice buildings.
True. Yeah, it's a lot more beautiful than other places. I love the trams. They need to have trams that look like that again. I mean, they have nice trams, don't get me wrong, but like, look how crazy these older trams were. Although the 1960s trams are pretty cool too, but they still have trams everywhere, and the neoclassical buildings are still there. This is where we like to.
This
we
is
were
the
here for Pride
Parliament.
Week.
You
Yeah.
can pause for a second. What's interesting here is they reconstructed this ramp, which in my mind was perfectly fine, and the construction went on for 6 or 8 years. I believe it also went over budget. And at some point, I was really wondering, is this just corruption, or are they building something underground? I have
Yeah,
no
of course.
idea, but it is. And I think even at least some type of bunker system for politicians even was official news. So, or some type of escape room or whatever. This escape room, how would you call it? A safe room or something?
Safe house.
But
Panic
safe
room.
house. But it really took a long time to construct. And yeah, I wonder what else is going on there.
Well, you can easily walk these same streets, and that's kind of nice. The Arch Abbey of Pannonhalma.
Pannonhalma. This is in Hungary. Something I still have to look deeper into, but also one of these older, interesting places. Supposedly, as they say here, a beacon of the country's religious and cultural history. There is also this, maybe also this abbey may be associated to the story of the Taltos, if you ever heard about the Taltos, Taltos, which were supposedly the Hungarian shaman priests of olden times. Through what I know with an alternative chronology, I can't vouch for one story or the other, but it's something worth checking out.
I think I'm supposed to do Think Tank still. I didn't realize that. We should probably do a few more, and then we have to do a part 4. Is that where we're at with this?
Yeah, it may well be. There's not so much left because some of the other, we can even just power through it. We'll do it in 5 minutes because some of the other links is just random things I stumbled across. This is more for anyone who wants to do deeper research, just to take a look at these things. Not necessarily much I can talk about. Monte Cassino, we have Galen, who had done the, I believe, the body humors, right? We have Francesco Maurolizzo. I don't remember what I wanted to talk about him. There's an American Whig Cliosophic Society, which I still have to research what they're doing. Is a debate union. Yeah, makes me think of the British debating style, where it's not the goal to actually engage in diplomacy, find common ground, and discern the truth, but it's mainly about how to use debating tricks to make your opponent look silly. We have Gaston Maspero. What was he about? French Egyptologist, director of general excavations and antiquities for the Egyptian government. So this will most likely in some way, shape or form relate back to the newest book of David Ewing Jr. and the mystery of the pyramids. Even quite a few years ago, I had only heard that the Egyptian archaeologists are a class unto themselves. They are highly government approved and they're pushing a certain narrative. And there's all kinds of questions there. Then we have
Pepe's pyramid.
Yeah, we have the pyramid of Pepe, right? Or Pepe. That's also something David Ewing Jr. talks about. Then we have Yemelyan Pugachev. I can only assume that he's brought up somewhere in the alternative chronology, and that's why I put him there. And then the next thing we have is the Mi'kmaq language. Let's see, I already saw Mi'kmaq in the chat. Maybe we should almost invite him at some point and speak more about this. I have no clue about this at all, but it seems highly interesting fringe language, let's say, or language with a low population that speaks. Oh yeah, and the flag. Look at the flag. Go up. That's interesting.
Islamic, Christian, Rosicrucian, Knights Hospitalier, Maltese. Interesting choice. Free word order based on emphasis rather than traditionally fixed order of subjects, objects, and verbs. I saw a moose standing right there on the hill. Could be, I saw him there on the hill right there, a moose, he was standing. Or I saw him there, a moose on the hill right there, he was standing. Or, yeah, you can change the way you arrange the words. That's pretty cool. We'll definitely, yeah, Mi'kmaq, if you're around, let's do a video sometime, bring you on, and you can talk to us if you know anything about Mi'kmaq. Let's otherwise, I'll look it up. We can talk about this more. Canadians will
because
care.
I think he commented that he speaks Mi'kmaq, so that'd be cool. There he is.
Yeah, bro.
With the
Let's
Eagles.
do it.
Oh, he's even got the flag.
Look at your symbol, bro.
Nice. Only sweet. Now I'm realizing.
Pretty sweet. That seems pretty cool. All right. Yeah, well, so we have biology for next time and music, and we can definitely fit that in there. Those are important, so I don't want to leave them out. We'll do that, but maybe we'll be safer if we don't talk about biology this time anyway. They always get upset at us when we talk about biology. So
yeah, don't you dare learn about your own body. Please leave that to the guys in the white coats that are certainly not funded by any pharmaceutical companies or entrained in pharmaceutical thinking for the entirety of their 8 to 12 year education. This was a public service announcement. Thank you very much, Andreas. Thanks everyone for joining. If you want to check out the links or support the show, you can check out the links below in the video description. And right now, coming up, Think Tank with Andreas and
David Plate and Paranoid American Thomas will be there. I don't know. I'll try to get crypto cubrology in there too. We'll see how it goes.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. I hope if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, you enjoy your summer, otherwise your winter. Best of luck, love, and health to everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you for participating. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Andreas. Show must go on.
Love you guys.
Watch Xirtus.
Always do.
Good viewer. Watch Xirtus. Watch Xirtus.